Welcome to another episode of Dr. MC's Self-Care Cabaret podcast. I'm Teresa Melito-Conners, a PhD-level self-care expert in the greater Boston area with a passion for helping others recognize the importance of caring for themselves. Today's episode is a conversation with Lorrine Patterson. Lorrine recently published her memoir, Freeing Your Heart for Love. Lorrine has a BS in business management and an MBA. She has worked in the hotel industry, property and facilities management, and specializes in customer service. Lorrine stewed over the idea of writing a book for the better part of a decade. It wasn't until the realities of pandemic life in 2020 took hold that she decided it was finally time to put pen to paper. Lorrine believes everything happens for a reason, and even if we aren't meant to understand why, we are all guided to the right place at the right time. Armed with this theory, she approaches each new day with contagious enthusiasm. When she is not nestled into her favorite couch writing, she enjoys spending quality time with her family. I first connected with Lorrine on social media through a group of aspiring authors, and yes, I remember when she posted the trailer for her book. Yes, a trailer. It was gripping. So I quickly went to pre-order the book, and I have to tell you, once I started reading it, I could not put it down. I am so excited to learn more from Lorrine today, and here is our conversation. Welcome, Lorrine, to the Dr. MC Self-Care Cabaret podcast. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity and for being a guest on your show. I'm excited too.
Thanks. And I want to just jump right in because I'm really excited to talk to you. I had the pleasure of reading your book. I pre-ordered it and was one of the first to receive it. And I read it like within the first, 48 hours of owning it. And that is not generally how I am. I have a really bad habit of buying books and not reading them or starting them and not finishing them. But your book held my attention and it was fabulous. So I want you to tell us more kind of about your book.
You know what, your comment, I've been hearing that a lot, which makes me feel really good because the way I wrote my book was I wanted to write it in scenes. I wanted it to be entertaining. I wanted people to feel the emotion and keep turning the page. So you're not the first person that said that. Like a lot of people have said, I don't even read books and I read your book in like 2 days. I was like, some people, like one girl said she would miss the bus, like stop to like continue reading. And I was like, wow.
Oh, it was definitely entertaining and like gripping, like you wanted to keep reading.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's, I purposely wrote it that way. But yeah, my book really, it was, something that my friends would joke with me about for like over a decade. They would hear my experiences, a lot of dating stories and boyfriends and stuff. And they would, some people would live through me and they were so inspired by me, but it was weird because I was so depressed inside. So for them to live my life, I was like, you don't want to live my life, right? Because it was not a good life, at least what I thought. And people didn't know what was going on underneath all of that smile that I used to do, going to work and just talking to people. They always thought I was happy. Some people told me, oh, you have no problems. I'm like, wow, you have no idea. Because when I would leave work, I just cry. Oh. I cry myself to sleep. I cry myself in the car. Always crying, always depressed, severe suicide depression. So, my friends would always say, you should write a book. And I was like, I'm not writing a book. Like I'm not even good in school. I hate English. I don't even read books. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to write a book. And then, fast forward to last year, April of 2020, I joined a virtual writing workshop and it was just to do creative writing with a lot of doctors and nurses. I was in the healthcare industry, managing facilities, and they were doing this for fun. I was like, oh, okay, sure. I'll do this, whatever. So when I was doing the writing prompts, that's when I really started opening up my mind to that, all the healing that I didn't even have from 1989, from my first husband. I was writing experiences about that. And I was crying one day at the table. And I just told my husband, I'm like, I don't know what's going on with me. I'm really emotional with this course I'm taking. And I just opened up my computer and I started typing. And even at that moment, I didn't even still know I was going to write a book until I joined the Hay House Challenge, which is where me and you met. And that really opened up my eyes to writing a book. And that's when I really got committed was, okay, in July, it was July, I believe. Right. And I said, I'm going to start writing this book. And so that's when I set my goal. I knew what I wanted to write about. I wanted to write about, the experiences I went through, the severe suicide depression at a very young age, not growing up in a home with love. And so I kind of took that into my teenage years, my adulthood, my 3 marriages that didn't work out until I met the love of my life in 2017. Like, it literally took me like 29 years to figure out how to love myself. And so that's really what the book, like how it was birthed, was my why. Like, I knew I wanted to inspire somebody going through the same experiences, and not, if I can help them not go through 29 years of what I went through, then I'm okay with putting out these, and you read it, like these experiences that nobody talks about, right? Like, even my third husband, the third part of my book, I was never going to tell anyone about that. And I said, this is a really important part of my journey, because that was when I woke up at 42 and I was like, okay, I'm going to be like 45. I'm 49 now, but it's like when I was 42, I'm like, I can't continue to live this way. I can't continue to keep dating. And, am I going to just keep this path of not valuing myself, not valuing my body? And that's when I decided to like transform my life. So it's just a book of, going through that journey to find that happiness and self-love, after 29 years of the abuse I did to myself and all the bad decisions that I didn't know what I was doing. I had no support, like zero support. I couldn't go back to my mom. I moved out when I was 17. So it's like, I'm not going back to my mom.
Right.
So it's just that whole, that's really kind of what the book's about.
Yeah, no, it was very powerful. And I haven't actually said the title. You didn't say it either. Freeing Your Heart for Love. And, there's really some truly raw and vulnerable pieces of your life that you share in that book. And I'm sure that you had moments of doubt during, that whole process. What helped you overcome that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I had a lot of doubt. I think I even closed the computer for a couple, especially the third part, the third husband. That was the hardest part to write. So what I did was I discovered through Hay House, I discovered Kyle Gray and Radley Valentine with the angel card readings. And I started pulling angel cards and connecting with the angelic realm. And I'm like, wow, these messages that are coming through are like real. Like, it was how I was feeling. And then I started practicing my Buddhism again, which originally I started in the 90s, but I pulled out my Buddhist, altar for my son, because my 19-year-old son was going through depression after he graduated high school. So I kind of started practicing that spirituality again. I discovered meditation through Hay House. I did some challenge that came up in my email, and the meditation helped me. And really just kind of going back to my why. I kept asking myself that question. Why do you want to do this, Lorrine? Why do you want to do this? And I was talking to myself a lot. And I listened to David Foster's album, 11 Words. That album helped me get through, and jazz music. I would turn on the jazz music, and that helped me keep going. And so every night I would just designate a time to write, and I would turn on my music and tell my family, unless the house is burning down or somebody is bleeding, don't bother me.
And that worked.
So my husband, I'd kick him out upstairs to the bedroom, told my kids, don't bother me. And I would just take that hour every night. It was 7 p.m. for some reason. 7 p.m. was that time where that part of my brain would just open up, and just like, sometimes my fingers would just flow. And the jazz music really helped me with that. And yeah, I finished in December of last year. I got to my word count. I wanted at least 55,000 words. So I just calculated it out in my head. I was like, okay, I need to write this much every day. And if I skipped a day, I would just make up for it. And that's really how I got through that writing process.
Yeah, no. And coming to terms kind of with that willingness to be vulnerable. It actually reminds me, in a little bit different, but during my doctoral process of earning my PhD, we had to write a paper. We had to write a lot of papers, but one in particular was called Your Sociocultural Perspective. And in that one was where I had to examine kind of my own stuff, shall we say. And there's been some rather unpleasant things in my life as well. And I had to putting it all on paper for the purposes of this assignment and piece of my dissertation was very difficult. You described it a little bit and reminded me of this kind of sitting there crying. Like I would almost get lost in my own little spiral of just life. And it was very difficult to kind of, because I'm sure that was half the point of the assignment, was to be able to recognize these things and to recognize any bias that you have and things that experiences that you had that may lead to why you, your socio-cultural perspective is the way that it is. And it was a really powerful assignment that we had to do. And that's when you were talking, it kind of reminded me of that, because I had a really difficult time getting through that process because, starting to talk about childhood abuse and recovering from an eating disorder and different things like, and while I was doing that, different people were actually coming back into my life that I was actually writing about, and people that are rather close to me, and that I don't have good relationships with. And like it was weird. And I was like, oh my God, what is happening? And it was just a difficult process. So I can only imagine, in thinking about you being so vulnerable and open in what you share in your book, that must have been difficult, but also cathartic in a way to kind of get it out. Yeah. Beautiful. So what do you have, a piece of advice you would give, maybe if there's another aspiring author listening to this podcast?
Yeah. My advice for somebody who wants to write their story, especially, I'm hearing a lot of people that want to write a story about painful experiences because they know it will help people, just kind of like my reason, but they're afraid to put it out there, and they're afraid they will hurt other people by putting it out there. And so just my advice for that is it's your story, right? Really go back to your why. Like I knew in my head clearly what my why was, and I knew it was to inspire others and encourage others. And so when I kept going back to that, all of that other outside background noise just kind of disappeared. Even my mom, I don't talk to her. I don't have a relationship with her, but she told one of my sons, I have 4 boys, and she told the second and oldest, because he still communicates with her. I don't know why that wasn't true what she wrote, and it wasn't even about my mom. It's really not about anybody. It's your story. It's about what do you want to tell the readers? What kind of message do you want to put out into the world? Who do you want to help? And that's really kind of what got me through writing that book, and not worrying about hurting people. Even my kids' fathers are in the book, right? Because that was my first and second husband. So I had to talk to them and let them know, I'm going to write about the experiences, but it's just experiences. It's decisions that I made too in the marriage, because I really wanted to write from compassion and not victim mode. Like I didn't want to bash people.
Right.
And also I changed all the names in the book except for me and my husband. So to protect the privacy of those, I did that. And so there's things you can do to get your book out there and not worry about, because I think imposter syndrome and who am I to write a book? Who's going to read my book? That's real. That came even while my book was printing, I was still do I want to do this? Even after all of that, it was done. I had everything was just done, interior layout, everything, the whole process. And I was just still questioning myself, do I really want to do this? So it's just keep going. And I'm so happy I pushed through all that, because it is helping so many younger girls. I wanted to reach the younger generation. It's helping the younger generation, which was my goal, to get to that audience. So,
and I think that's really important, because when I think about my self-care work, and of course self-love plays such a big piece of self-care, I think about getting it to younger generations, because people tend to wait before they start really taking care of themselves, until maybe they're forced to with a scary health diagnosis or something else, or they're just getting older and they're facing their own mortality and they start thinking, oh my God, now I need to take care of myself. No, you needed to start taking care of yourself long ago. And so getting to those younger generations, I think that's really, really important. And I think your book could be really helpful in that area, and just seeing here's this woman that had all these experiences, and maybe they can relate to some of them, or maybe they can just be friendly warnings, I don't know, for warning signs for different things. But Yeah, really powerful. So speaking of self-care, tell me how you like to practice self-care.
Yes, I love self-care. So to me, self-care is not selfish. And I know in the past I have felt selfish for taking care of my own needs because I was always about people pleasing, taking care of other people and first instead of me. And so I learned, through my journey that if I can take just even like 10 minutes out of my day to do something that's good for me. So every morning, actually, I'm very blessed to have my day job, because I work from home and I could literally wake up and start my day when I want. So when I start my day, because I truly believe the first 30 minutes of your day sets the trajectory for you the whole day. And so I use that first hour when I first wake up after my husband and the kids go to school. My one son, he's in school still. After I get them all out the door, I'm like, okay, now's my time. So I just I practice my Buddhism. I meditate for about 25 minutes, and then I pull my angel cards, and I read positive affirmations every morning, a positive quote. There's all these things I do like that first hour I wake up. And then after that, I just go on with my day. And it's not like perfect day, I would say, all the time. But because I have that self-love toolbox, I like to call it now, I have my tools. Like if I'm going through something bad during the day, I've just learned to send people love. So I just send people who hurt me or people who say things to me throughout the day. I send them love, maybe they're going through something, but that morning practice that I do of taking care of my own needs really kind of helps me open up my mind to what others are going through. So having compassion for others when people are not so nice, even when you drive like on the road, there's so much road rage out there, or somebody cuts you off. And I'm just like, well, obviously that person is in a rush and they need to get somewhere. Maybe their mother's dying or, you just never know. And so when I put my mind back into that place, then the day usually goes better for me. So that's part of my self-care, is just not worrying about people, worry about yourself.
Yeah.
Because you're responsible for your own happiness, not anyone else. So
exactly. And I think we need more compassion, and we need to reframe a lot of things more from the lens of compassion, because it's easy, when that person cuts you off, to do what? Get mad at them, or, yell back, or maybe say something, beep your horn or whatever, or internalize it. And then now you're in a bad mood or whatever it is. And I think that's really powerful what you said about how you start the day, because I also think that that's, really important. And I think about like the laws of attraction. And I usually use this example, which comes from The Secret, which is one of my favorites. I know the documentary is a little cheesy, but it's really good. I love it too, but it's a little cheesy. But they give the example of if you wake up in the morning and you stub your toe, and then you go downstairs and you spill coffee on your shirt, and this is the worst day. This is the worst day ever. And you just keep saying how bad you're gonna have such a bad day. And what happens? You have a bad day. You continue to attract more of that. So I'm always telling people in my workshops and whatnot, like, you gotta like shift that and get away from that. Otherwise you're just attracting more negativity into your life. And it is really powerful. So I appreciate very much that you talked about that. I think that's a lovely way to start your day. Yeah, very good. Do you have a favorite deck? I love card decks, and I actually have a bad habit of just buying lots of those as well, along with books. Do you have a favorite card deck? You mentioned Radley Valentine. I didn't catch the other name that you...
Yeah, so Kyle Gray is also a Hay House author. I love Hay House. So I have Kyle Gray's deck, Angel Oracle Guide deck, and then I have Radley Valentine's Angel Tarot Wisdom deck. So those are the two angel decks I do. And then I have Gabby Bernstein's 3 decks, the Spirit Junkie, Universe Has Your Back. And what's the other one? There's a third one.
I have one of hers. I can't think of the name of the deck either. It might be the one you're talking about.
Yeah. So I have all 3 of those decks, and I have this schedule. So every day I pull 2 angel cards from those 2 decks I just mentioned. And then from Gabby's deck, I pull Monday, Universe Has Your Back. Wednesday, I pull the Spirit Junkie. Oh, Super Attractor.
Oh, yeah.
Friday, I pull protractor, and I put it at my altar because I believe everybody should have a sacred space in their house, you know, where you pray or where you meditate, like have this space. And I have this space in my house. And so I'll put the cards there so that when I'm doing my prayer, I could read those cards continuously, programming my brain. And I do this all day long because I'm the type of person that could slip back, you know, and it really does help change your mindset. Like truly, I know this because I'm living it. Like I could be upset about something, but I'm like, it's not that bad, you know, because I'm reading, like my whole house has positive words everywhere.
I know. I love
I
that.
mean, it's just like threw up in my house because everywhere I pass by, I can see something, you know, it's like, oh, I am beautiful. Okay. Yeah. My nose is not big. My hair is too gray. You know, it's like, it's not too gray. You know, I covered up a little bit of the gray, but you know, it's just kind of like those reminders. Like I need those reminders, and you really have to find what works for you because not everybody's routine works for everybody.
Sure.
So.
And that's the best part about self-care though, right? We can decide what's going to work for us and go with it. I'm like you, I need constant reminders. Like I have things everywhere. And when you talk about the altar, I do have, I call it my self-care space, but there is an altar space in that room where I have some of my Buddha statues and candles and incense and crystals and some cards that really resonate with me and art pieces. And also it's actually kind of a big setup, and I love it. And it's just, you know, I set that up in this space when we moved into the house a few years ago, and I love it. Like it's my chill space, my self-care space. And it's in the room that I spend most of my time in, which is the room I podcast from also. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's really helpful. You need those, you know, those reminders. I also recently did a thing. You'll love this. You'll be doing this next. I took, my mom saw it somewhere and I thought it was so cool. I took a piece of duct tape, and I love leopard print. So it's leopard print duct tape. And I put it on the floor in the bathroom on the threshold, like going, you know, so I have to cross over it going in and out of the bathroom at my house.
Yeah.
And I try to every time and I don't do it every time, but most of the time when I see it, I remember to remind myself of my intentions, or I'll repeat a mantra, or I'll just, I don't know. Usually my word that I go to for my manifesting is abundance. So I'll think something to myself about that, or I'll think, I don't know, maybe whatever's kind of comes into my mind for that day's intention. I've had it there for a couple of weeks now, and I think it's kind of cool. I like it.
That is cool. I'm going to borrow that.
Like, Lauren's going to have duct tape all over the house now.
No, every time you step over that threshold, you have that thought.
Yes.
Like it's a reminder. Okay.
Yeah. And then, so you can do it, you know, on the way into the bathroom, the way out of the bathroom. You could do it in any room. You could do it at an office, or I work in a school during the day, and one of the teachers saw it. I posted on Instagram. One of the teachers wants to do it in her kindergarten classroom. And I thought that would be the sweetest thing. I'd love to watch the little kids like cross over and then say their little mantras. I thought that would be really cool. I need to set that up for her. But just, you know, I need those constant reminders, and I think that's okay. Yes. And I love how you use the card decks also, because those can be really powerful and really good tools to help guide you and point you in the right direction and whatnot. So that's awesome. And we can link, we'll make sure in the episode notes, of course, that we have Lauren's book, but that also some of the other things that she's mentioned. And we've mentioned Hay House several times. For folks that maybe don't know, it's a very large publishing company that was started by Louise Hay, and they publish mostly in the health and wellness arena. A lot of self-help, and just they wonderful things that they publish. So that's awesome. And they do a lot of free workshops. So if you want to get involved, and I do recommend, and you know, any of their free stuff is fabulous. They give a lot of information to aspiring writers and authors. So that's very helpful. Yeah, so that's great. And I know I wanted to talk to you about the relationship domain of self-care, because I know, you know, you share in the book about previous marriages and whatnot, but, you know, following you on Instagram and having read your book, I know that, you know, relationships weren't always, I don't know, challenging in the past, but now you have the love of your life, as you describe him, and I get to see all the fun, wonderful things you share on Instagram. You make him dance with you and whatnot. I haven't done that to my husband yet, but I've threatened to, so we'll see, maybe eventually. But so I'm wondering if you could share maybe a piece of advice, a relationship advice, or just a little bit more about, how your relationship now is so different, maybe from previous ones, and how that came to be?
Yeah, that's a great question, because that was my whole book, was about relationships. So what's the difference between now and before? Well, before, I was always seeking validation and love in other people, mostly men. So for some reason, I thought if I didn't have a man, then I wasn't whole.
Mm.
And that was for a very long time. And I would always, if I wasn't happy in one relationship, I would seek another man while I was in the relationship. So it's like, it was just this continuous cycle in my head that I needed a man to be whole. And I went through that like for a very long time until I figured out after that third husband. So I believe the universe was giving me all these lessons. So I was always the type of girl, if I gave my body to this man, he'll love me more.
Mm.
If I do this, he'll love me more. And I was always doing things for men, like even football. I say football because I hate football. And nothing against the football fans, but I'm just not a football person. I love baseball. But I don't like football. But I would always become this football fan for guys. And I would wear the jerseys. And, I had a boyfriend that liked the Cowboys, and I didn't like the Cowboys, but I was just like, go, 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 So it was like, I was just pretending to be somebody I wasn't. Every single relationship I had, even my 3 marriages, I was always trying to be somebody, And with the third marriage, that was the ultimate lesson, because I was being served all these exams. I call it like life's like school, right? Like I've heard this somewhere, and it totally resonated with me, that you will be served the same exams until you pass. And I was being served all these exams with these relationships that I kept getting into. And some of them were unavailable men, meaning like married men that said they're going to leave their wife. They never left their wife. And I was just allowing this to happen. Even you read the book with the one guy that, hid me for a whole year because his family was going to disown him. And I allowed that to happen. And it was all choices that I made. That's why now when I wrote the book, I know it wasn't because, they told me to. It was my own decision. But the difference is now with my husband now, like I figured out the self-love part. So I took care of myself first, took a break from the dating, and that's when I met him. And that was really kind of the universe saying, okay, she passed. We're going to give her a good man now. So here you go, Lauren, you deserve it. It was kind of like this passing, like I graduated, she finally figured out that she doesn't need to give her body to men anymore. She has self-worth. She values herself. My husband, he accepts me for all of me unconditionally, everything in the book and more. He knows about everything. And he just still loves me, and he loves my kids. My son now calls him dad. And it's like, we've come such a long way. And with the trust too, like I didn't trust him. If I was him, he should have ran for the hills, because I put him through so much. Like Teresa, like I just like, I'm amazed that he stuck around, because I didn't trust anybody. By that point, I was like 45 when I met him. I was like, I don't trust no man. Like, what are your intentions? Like I literally had a list of questions of what I want to ask the guys.
Oh my God.
And, when I was on Tinder and when I met him, I was literally when I knew guys just wanted to have the sexual intimacy, I was like, not for me. I'm not going down that path anymore. When before I would be like, okay, maybe he's the one,
Right. He likes me.
And so, yeah. And so that's the difference with, the relationship before and now, is that I know what I want. I know that what it takes to make me happy. And even if my husband, as much as I would be sad, even if something happened with our relationship, like I would still continue on. I would still take care of myself. I would still, move on with my life instead of taking my life, because when I was going to take my life in my 30s, it was because of a breakup. It was because of the guy that hid me for a year. It's like, oh gosh, I'm useless. I'm worthless. All those negative things that I used to say about myself. I don't say any of that anymore. So yeah, that's what I would say is the difference.
Well, that's a huge difference. And I think it's really important to highlight that, because we tend to, as women, seek that validation in a man. And, I was a lot younger than you when I figured that out, which I'm grateful for. But, having grown up with an abusive father, then my instinct was to seek men like my dad. So that's what I went after, at a young age, and found a lot of men just like my dad, and that were, not worthy of any of my love and attention, but I felt like I had to, hold on to that and seek that. And that's what I looked for. And then, I laugh when you say about what you put your husband through. My husband calls the period of time when I didn't trust him in the beginning, just because of what I had been through and my experiences. He calls that brave front, because I did kind of torture him for a little while too, where I was just very like exactly how you described. Like I wasn't trusting. I figured he was just another one and the same, and he's so not, and it's very different from that, and is an amazing partner, and loves me unconditionally, and it goes both ways, flaws and the good parts and the bad parts, of course. And but I think you had to, I had to go through that to get to him. And I think, he had some unpleasant experiences also. And we talked about that, and he's like, he also had to go through that to then be able to come together with me. And with the self-love, like, first piece, that's really, really important. Like, you can't just wait for somebody else to like fix it for you. Like, and that's one of my favorite books. And we'll link this in the episode notes too, is called Cinderella Was a Liar. That book actually helped me a lot, like during my dating days, because it talks about, the Cinderella Complex, which is a little bit like what you were talking about, where, we seek that, we're looking for our Prince Charming, and we're looking for the savior, and we're, whatever. And then you get kind of wrapped up in that ideal, and it's just, doesn't tend to always work out as we, the fairy tale doesn't always work out. Eventually it might, but it starts with you not seeking love with another person and seeking that validation. But that's a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah. I mean, I write about my Noah, from The Notebook, one of my favorite movies, but I was in that fairy tale love story, So yeah, I totally resonate with what you just said.
Yeah. No, and that's a whole like psychology rabbit hole we could go down with the whole Cinderella complex and how
that's a whole nother episode.
That's a whole nother episode where we talk, how we teach, little girls about love, and, the princess and the prince, and like all of that. And we don't need to go into that now, but, that's a whole separate thing. But, really important to remember. And thank you for sharing all of that. So last, but certainly not least, how can folks find you? Where can we get your book? Where can we learn more about you?
Yeah, everything is on my Instagram page, at Writing is My Kismet. My website's there. I have a link there that links to my podcast show, which is Show Up in Love. Exciting things coming with the nonprofit that I'm launching next year, which is helping teenage girls practice self-love, a 30-day self-love program. So more to come on that. And my book is also in the link on my Instagram, but it's really just my website, LorrinePatterson.com. I have several places you can find me. I'm on Amazon too. So
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us here today. I really appreciate it. And I hope folks will listen to this episode and go buy the book, because they're going to be curious. They're going to want to hear and read for themselves all of the awesomeness that you share in your book. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I love that Lauren took the leap to share her story. I invite you to consider sharing your story if this is something you've been wanting to do or are feeling called to do. It is a powerfully cathartic experience. To quote Brené Brown, you either walk inside your story and own it, or you stand outside your story and hustle for your worthiness. To get started, consider your why. Why are you doing what you do? Not just about writing a book, but starting with your why is a great way to get in touch with what you really want. And when we think about self-care and the practices that help us cope, it's really important to consider what's in your toolbox. Lorrine describes her favorite decks, which we've linked in the episode notes for you. She also uses affirmations, jazz music, and more. So what's in your toolkit? And think about how you want to start your day. This is very important when we consider self-compassion, self-care, and self-love. We've talked on the podcast before about morning routines. Cherie Dunwell's episode, Don't Feed the Trolls, comes to mind, where she describes taking 1 minute every morning to check in with herself and developed her morning meditation practice in just 1 minute. Now don't tell me you don't have time for that. Lorrine also offers some great ways that she starts her day to set herself up for success. Thanks for listening to this episode. We're thrilled to be back with season 2. Remember to subscribe and rate this podcast on your preferred player. The ratings help us grow and share the message of self-care. If you have comments, suggestions, or questions, please reach out by emailing podcast@drmcselfcare.com. That's drmcselfcare.com. And come join the cast party at Dr. MC's Self-Care Cabaret on Facebook and Instagram at DRMC Self-Care. On my website, drmcselfcare.com. Be sure to like, subscribe, and love me across all my social media platforms for the most up-to-date information on self-care. Thanks, and be well.